Hello, welcome. I'm excited to be here. My name is Filomena Jack, and today we're going to be working on monochromatic watercolors. And I'm putting watercolors in air quotes because we're actually going to be using some water-soluble markers. So if you have this brand Crazy Art or old school Crayola, this project is going to work for you. It is not going to work if you use a Sharpie. Sharpies are meant to be permanent. And we could have a whole long discussion about what permanent actually means with markers, but for today, not Sharpies and not highlighters. So something like this water-soluble marker, washable marker. We are going to work on some paper. I like this brand a lot. It's called Canson. It's mixed media paper, but really any type of paper that doesn't curl up too easily once it gets wet can be used. I like this. It's easy to find, and often you can find it with more sheets for less money. And oh, here's a quick tip. So if you need to get all of these out at once, just undo the metal here. Don't try to rip every single page out. Just undo this metal binding and all of your pages will be free. So what gives me the right to come to you and talk to you about colors? Well, good question. First of all, I am a professional artist. I sell artworks all over the world, in galleries, online. I teach art to many, many different types of people. I teach 2 days a week in an elementary school, which is a lot of fun. And I'm just an artsy girl. I have a Bachelor of Fine Arts. So all of those things being said, I feel confident that I'm going to be able to express to you all the great things about this art project. Okay, so monochromatic. What does that mean? Well, that means we're using one color or one hue, H-U-E. If we use the word H-U-E, that means color. So if I say, what hue is that marker? The answer would be blue. Monochromatic means we're using one hue. If you've ever gotten picked up a one of those paint sample cards at a home improvement space, and you'll see it goes from light blue to dark blue. That's all the hue of blue. It just may be showing you different tints. Tints is another artwork word. Tints means that it goes from, let's say, a dark color, a dark hue to a lighter hue. Tint means that some white has been added to it. So today our project is monochromatic versus polychromatic. Polychromatic means many different colors. Even if you have 2, that could be considered polychromatic. Today's art piece is going to be monochromatic. And it's going to look something like this. Isn't it amazing? Yes, it is. Thank you for saying so. I got this idea originally from another artist, and her name is Elisa Burke. You should check out Elisa Burke. She is all over the internet. I think she's fantastic, and I always think it's good to give credit where credit is due. I learned this technique from her, but I took the project and made it my own. And I'm hoping that you're going to do that too. I'm hoping that you're going to learn this and want to teach it to everyone you know. And you're going to say, you know what? I learned this from Filomena Jack, who learned it from Elisa Burke. And now I'm teaching you. We are going to be using just one color marker today. And I specifically like to pick colors that are a bit deeper, darker. Like if you were to pick up a yellow marker, this might not be as effective, though I would like you to experiment at another time. So greens work well, blue works really well, red works really well. I'm going with blue because we are getting a watercolor effect. And in general, when we think of water, we think of blue, cool colors, and they're calming and they're relaxing colors. And I would love you to feel calm and relaxed, excited about art, but calm and relaxed as we make this. So how are we going to do it? Okay, so we're going to grab some paper. And if you don't have paper that's good for watercolors, that's fine. I would prefer that you practice on whatever you have at home. So again, some of these water soluble or washable markers. It is helpful if you have a paintbrush, and if you don't have a paintbrush, a cotton swab will work. Even your fingers will work. If you wanted to use a pencil to get started, that's fine too. But I'm going to ask you to ignore your eraser when we begin. Just think about making marks, not taking marks away. And I'd also like you to think about just going for it with the marker, not worrying about making a sketch, because we're just here to have fun. We're just here to learn a new technique. When you're going onto some other project and you want to make it perfectly perfect, if you wanted to make a sketch first, that would be fine. But for today, I'm just going to throw the pencil away and we're just going to work with our markers. So again, you don't want to be using a marker that says permanent. If it says permanent, this isn't really going to work. Okay, so on your mark, get set, let's make some art. Along the way, I'm going to talk to you about polychromatic, but we're going to stick in the monochromatic zone for right now. So I am going to grab one of my pieces of paper that came from this Canson art pad. Again, use whatever you have around. You know what? I'm going to start by showing you. We're gonna skip to the end a little bit just to show you how exciting this all is. I also have clean water. See how clean this water is? If you start out with muddy water, you're going to create muddy colors on your artwork. So please always start with clean water. And I am a person who is left-handed dominant. I usually make art with my left hand, though sometimes I use both hands. Because I'm left-handed dominant, all of my supplies are on my left side. And I would suggest the same thing for you. If you are left-hand dominant, please put your marker, please put your water, please put your tools on your left side. And then on your right side, you can put stuff like extra paper that you don't need right now. Or if you're having something to drink, like if you're having some water or some tea, put that on your other side so that it's not in your way. Because I'm assuming that just like I'm obsessed with making art, you're going to become obsessed too and do it for many, many hours every day. And I would love for you to move your body in a way that is helpful. So if I keep all of my supplies on my left side, then it's easy for my body just to dip into my water and come back to my art. So if I had my water over here, I would constantly have to go and reach and find that water. So I'm thinking smart about my art, okay? Your art studio should be set up to make art easy for you. Okay, so this graphic I created here, I did with this blue Crazy Art marker. And I want to show you basically what we're going to be working on. So I'm reaching off screen just to dip my paintbrush into some water. And then this is the magic. Ooh, yeah. Notice that I am working on a flat surface because this is wet. If I were to work on a surface that was tilted, the water would drip. And that's not what I'm going for right now. But if it were something I was going for, I would use that to my advantage. I would use gravity to move my water and my paint down the page. But look at what happens when I add a little bit of water to that marker. It looks just like watercolor. It is so cool. Now, is it as permanent as artist grade watercolor? I haven't done a real test, but I'm going to suspect that it's not as super permanent as artist grade watercolor. But do we care? We do not care today. We are more interested in learning how to make art with some supplies that we probably have at home. And if you don't have them at home, a lot of these can be picked up. These markers can be purchased very inexpensively. If you are a younger person, you can maybe ask for these types of supplies for your birthday or any sort of holiday. They make great trick-or-treat presents, I think. Put a marker in everyone's trick-or-treat bag. So you can see with me adding just a little bit of water to this marker, I can create an effect that's just like watercolor. Okay, I'm going to move this to the side and we're going to start working on our floral, because that's what we're really here to talk about. So we're here to talk about a project sort of like this. So it is monochromatic, meaning I'm only using one color, but I have multiple tints. I have multiple tints. You can see some places the water looks, or the paint looks much darker, and then it fades and gets lighter, and then it gets dark again. So it's still very interesting. We still have contrast, and contrast is an important word. Contrast means that you can see the difference between one area and another area. If everything was dark, like this blueberry right here, we wouldn't have contrast and we wouldn't be able to see all of the different areas. So by mixing up how much ink or how much marker I'm putting down in different places, I get contrast. Sometimes I leave the white of the paper, which is a traditional watercolor technique. In very traditional watercolor, there is no white paint. The artist would leave the white of the paper to show a highlight, like how I'm showing a highlight here on this blueberry. I'm going to put this to the side. I started this one. It's not finished. I wanted to start this so I could show you the process, like this part 2 after the paint has dried. And if I say paint or marker, I mean the same thing today, because we are using our markers as though they are paint. So here I am. I've set up my clean sheet of paper. I also have a paper towel nearby, so I could wipe off some of my moisture in my brush if I wanted a drier brush. My favorite paper towel to use for art is Viva, the brand Viva, V-I-V-A. I am not sponsored by any of these companies, though that wouldn't be a bad thing. They should call me. I like Viva towels because I can use them over and over and over again, and I think it's a lot less wasteful. And I actually make some other things out of the paper towels. Once they're dry, I will laminate them and make them into bookmarks and gifts and ornaments and all kinds of things. I could also use a cotton, this is just a cotton handkerchief, and I just think it looks so beautiful when it goes through the wash. Okay, so enough yapping. I'm gonna start this art project. So in design, it's great when you can work in multiples of odd numbers, like 3, 1, 2, 3. I'm going to call these daisy flowers my superstars of my design. So I've got 1, 2, 3, and then these sort of dahlia shaped flowers, 2, 3. I've got 3 here as well. They're a little bit smaller than my divas here. And then I've got these blueberries and these other little random flowers just hanging out. And I just put those in as though, just so that they could fill up the background some more. So I really like when the whole paper is fully designed. Notice I paint all the way to the edge. If I were to frame this, I would worry about the frame later. You could leave a little border all the way around, but I usually get too excited and I draw right off the side of the paper. And you know what? It's just fine. It's just fine. We aren't going to worry about much today. We are not going to put the paint or the markers in our mouths, but really, other than that, we aren't worried about very much. So I talked about using multiples of 3. So I'm going to start drawing some sort of wacky flower. So let's see. And you could use just squares. You could do a bunch of robots. If you're using an orange marker and you wanted to do a bunch of jack-o'-lanterns, that would work too. But I am really digging this theme of the blue. Plus, I painted my nails specifically so they could be complementary colors, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But we are going to start here. So I am just going to start loosely drawing. And the more that you do this, the easier it becomes. So if your drawings don't look like my drawings, I say that's perfect because they should look like your drawings. Just like that other artist I was talking about, Elisa Burke, her flowers look really, really beautiful. She's been doing it a very long time. So of course her flowers look very, very beautiful. My flowers looks pretty okay as well. I've been doing this for a long time, so maybe I'll do some spiral kind of flowers. So if this is the first time you're trying to draw a flower and your flower doesn't look like my flower, well, of course it doesn't, because I have been doing this for a long time. And I will continue to do it. I really do think we should draw a little something every single day. Right now, we're in October. It's October 2020, and I am participating in Inktober, which was created by Jake Parker, and it is a worldwide drawing challenge where every day you draw something in ink, and I am loving it. Maybe I'll do some of these like kind of tulipy shapes. Excellent, excellent. I hope it's going well for you at home. If you're just following along and watching, that's cool. If you're drawing along, that's cool too. If you're just enjoying looking at colors, I hear you. I am all about the color. I live for color. My art, I very often paint in acrylics and ink. And I am sort of known as a colorist because I use very strong, vibrant colors. There is no gray in my palette per se. And we'll talk, when we talk about complementary colors in just a little bit, we'll talk about why you almost never have to buy brown or grayish type colors. All right, so let's start with that. Let's see where it goes. So there are different ways you can go about this. So here's your next art thing to know. There are spaces that are called positive spaces, such as this leaf. And then there are spaces that are called negative spaces, such as the area around the leaf, or leaves, if we're going plural. We have the space that is the dot or the bubble, and we have the space that is around the dot or the bubble. If we look at this sample, here I've started to color in and started to marker in all of the space that is around these shapes. So in essence, I am coloring the negative shape, and I am leaving the positive shape uncolored. So you have options, my friends. You can do a little bit of both of these things. You could choose to just do one. You can really, really get some interesting effects when you mix it up. When we look at this sample here, I've done sort of both. I've gone around the shape here. So I've colored the negative shape around these big daisies. And then in the smaller like chrysanthemum type flowers, I've done the positive shape. So you can mix it up or you can do just one. If we look at the original sample, I've done mostly the positive shapes, but then I went just outside this big rose to give it a little depth, to make it look like it was floating above everything else. So I painted a little bit around the positive shape into the negative shape. So many cool things you can do, right? You can do this, you can do that, and you don't need a lot of supplies. Isn't that great? So when you are using a supply for something it's not intended for, like we are using these markers to make them look like watercolor, it's called stretching your supplies. So if you were to do a Google search on how do I stretch my art supplies, you would come up with all kinds of art classes, just like this one, where we are using a tool, a marker in this case, to make it look like something else. So let me show you what I do when I dip my brush. This may sound simple, and it is. So I dip my brush just a little bit, and then I kind of take some of the water off. And if I wanted to take even more water off, I might tap onto my paper towel. So just a little bit of water. And again, remember, please, friends, always start with clean water. And maybe you even have to replace your water at some point during your art session. If you have muddy water and you're trying to make bright colors, mud plus bright equals mud. So I would love for you to think about keeping your colors bright. All right, here we go. I'm gonna do the inside of these daisies, and look at what happens when, oh, it's so beautiful. It's so beautiful. So you could do every other petal, and you'll see you can add more marker to get even deeper tones. I talked about making sure that you have lots of contrast. And one way that you can tell if you have contrast is to get a little space between you and your art project. You see, I'm not sitting right on top, like my eyeballs aren't right on top, right? I'm sitting away from my art project. And if I squint my eyes, so I've taken my glasses off and I squint my eyes, I will only see the highlights and the lowlights. So I will see the shadows and the bright spots. So if I want to know if I have enough contrast, I can use that very fancy art technique they'll teach you in all of the art schools, to squint your eyes. All right, so painting, painting, painting. And I'm sort of letting some of the water puddle up and do what it wants to do. I'm not specifically trying to keep any of these petals white, or I could if I wanted to. Like I got a little spot there that is still white. No water has gone onto that, so no ink is darkening that area. If I leave that little area white, then it'll look like a little highlight. So I'm going to keep it there for now because again, I can't really go back. Once I have put ink somewhere, it's there. I may be able to lift it up. With traditional watercolor, you can sort of erase some of the paint by putting more water on it. And for the most part, it'll come up, but you may not get back to the bright white of the paper. So let's see, I'm going to mix it up on this one. I am going to fill in that center, but then I'm going to go around these petals. So I'm going to go around the positive shape and I'm going to define the negative shape here. All of these art terms, you can impress all of your friends and your teachers and anybody else that will listen to you talk about art and talk about negative shapes and positive shapes. I remember being in art school in my late teen years, being in art school, and the first time I had a professor talk about negative and positive shapes, I felt like I was in the Matrix. I felt like I had a new perspective on the world, and it was true because now I could see things. And then I could see the shape around things, which just, for my art brain just made me so happy. So there. So now, let's see. It may be coming up a little light on camera for you. You can see a little bit of that. So then maybe I'll fill in. Oh, and I just went out of the line a little bit. That's fine. But I could use my finger and just swipe it back into the space. And I may be going a little faster than I might normally because I'm here teaching this class with you. But if you're all on your own, you don't need to rush. Take your time. The shape of the brush that I'm using is this rounded shape with a point. I like the point because I can get into tiny little places. This brand is Princeton. Princeton makes some pretty good brushes, and I always use synthetic brushes. I never use brushes that are made from animal hair because for me personally, I feel like it is cruel to pluck the hairs from animals so that I can make a piece of art. I don't need to do that. I can use synthetic brushes. Again, you could use, if you don't have a paintbrush, you could use a cotton swab, and you might need a couple because eventually it might get full of color. But you see, even with a cotton swab, I can essentially use it like a paintbrush. Other shapes that I like are square shapes. So because I'm using morphic shapes, and morphic means rounded shapes, because I'm using morphic shapes, using a rounded brush makes more sense. If I was making a bunch of squares, if I was making a big old robot, I would probably use a square brush because then I could get the square shapes, the shapes with right angles more easily with a square brush. So again, it's about making art in a smart way. Use the tools that work best for whatever it is you're trying to do. Whatever it is you're trying to do. Okay, so so this guy, I'm going in. I like giving myself some rules or some parameters. So one of my parameters was monochromatic. I'm only using one color. Another rule was that I was going to fill the page. I was going to fill the page just like I did here. So I may not fill this specific page all right here in class, but I will go and finish it up. And you can follow along with my art adventures. I'm all over the socials. I'm Filomena Jack Studio on Instagram and on Facebook. So I will eventually post pictures from today's art projects once I get closer to them being complete. All right. And I love seeing what students make. So if you want to DM me pictures of your projects that you're working on, if you have any questions, you can also find me over at philomenajackstudio.com. I have a free newsletter, and about every 6 weeks I give away a free piece of art. If you're on the newsletter list, it's super fun. It's one of the favorite things I do is give away art. That makes me happy. I also have murals I've painted all over Elmira, New York, and I am happily taking more requests for murals. So now I want to add some more depth into the center of this flower. So I'm going back. Now that that paint is sort of dry, I'm going back and making short choppy strokes, and I'm adding more ink, more color. So now you can really see, if I were to squint now, I could really see the depth here. And I could choose to leave this just as is, or I could add water to it if I wanted to move the color around a little. But it would be perfectly fine if I just left it like it was. Super cool, super cool. Loverly. I love doing this project. All right. Every once in a while, you can turn your page, and if you're working on a canvas, this won't work on a canvas. You need to use it on paper. But if you're working on some project, turning it upside down will sometimes give you a new view of what you're working on. If you're doing something that needs to be symmetrical, meaning it matches on the left side and the right side, let's say you're trying to make a face and you were trying to make it symmetrical, turning your canvas or your paper upside down. So if you're into making manga and you want to make your characters have an equal eyeball placement, maybe turn your paper upside down to see what is going on, if things seem like they're matching up. Or don't care and just keep drawing and just keep painting. That's sort of my jam. When I'm trying to be careful, I'm careful. But for the most part, I just want to show the world how much fun it is to play with color, to move color around. Oh, so fun. So fun. All right, I'm going to let this dry down a little bit, and I'm going to talk to you about the color wheel. I could talk about the color wheel all day long. I talked about my nails and why I specifically painted my nails orange today, because I knew it was a complementary color, that orange and blue are complementary colors. They're like, hey, you look nice. Hey, you look nice. So complementary means that they make each other more vibrant. They don't actually do it. It's sort of magic that your eyeballs and your brain does. So the colors don't change themselves, but how we perceive them in our brains changes. So orange and blue are complementary colors. So if we look at the color wheel, and this is one I made with some little kids, so it is pretty wonky and I love it. It's one of my favorites. So orange is on the opposite side of blue. And yellow is on the opposite side of purple. So yellow and purple are complementary. Green and red are complementary. And if you have trouble remembering that, think about, in general, what colors do most people decorate for Christmas? Red and green. Why? Because we have green trees, usually green Christmas trees. And if you put red decorations on it, the red is going to really pop. If you were to take your green tree and put like a blue or a purple decoration, it would look lovely, but the decorations wouldn't pop so much. And then when we go purple and yellow, so if you look around your supermarket or at the food in your pantry, look at the labels, look at the packaging. Designers know that if I put yellow next to purple, it's really going to pop. Like if you look, I think a Fritos bag is like orangey and blue, because the designers, the artists, get that. Those are artists who make those designs, know that orange and blue are complementary colors. So I chose orange fingernails because I wanted the blue to really look extra happy and blue. So here's the thing. Here's the negative to that positive statement that about complementary colors. So that's all well and good when two colors are dry. When two colors are dry, but if two colors are wet, if I were to take that wet blue, and here's just some other random drawing I've got hanging out. Do I have an orange? Let's see. Let's make sure I have the right colors before we begin this. I'm going to go red and green. So red and green are complementary colors. You look nice. Yeah, you look nice too. So when I have this red, and then I will take this green. So my positive shape is the star, and I made it red. I'm going to pick up a clean brush here. Here's a new shape for you to see, sort of a dagger. And this brand of brushes is Trekell. They are lovely. They are handmade. Again, I have synthetic bristles because I don't think it's necessary to hurt an animal just so I can make art. So I am going to get that red nice and juicy and wet. Then I'm going to take another brush and get my green nice and juicy and wet. Oh, don't they look lovely sitting next to each other? It almost looks like a watermelon, my favorite fruit. So they are lovely. Notice that I don't have them touching yet. Notice that they're not touching. Let me get a little more water on this red. Oh, and now we're starting to touch. All right, so look at what happens when I take two complementary colors and I mix them. When they are wet, they become grayed out, they become more dull, they become a brownish color. So complementary colors, when they're dry and sitting next to each other, they make each other happier, brighter, more exciting. And again, they don't actually change the color, they just change the way our brains perceive the colors. But when they mix, oh my, they turn to brown, they turn to grayish. So in theory, you never have to buy a brown marker or a gray tube of paint. In theory, there are some colors that are hard to mix all on their own, but in actuality, there are really only 3 colors in the typical color wheel that we use. It's just yellow, blue, and red. Those trifecta are our primary colors, though hint, hint, there are other color wheels. Oh my gosh. So don't get too confused. So yellow, red, and blue are really all the other colors are made up from those 3. So in theory, you only ever need those 3, but it is not always easy to mix the exact shade of what you want. So complementary colors, wet red into wet green creates like a muddy color. How are we doing on time? We've got about 10 minutes left in class. This is exciting. I hope you're having a good time. So again, I said I've been working flat, so you can see if I tilt my paper, whoop, I get drips, which is fine. Maybe that's what I'm going for. You just need to know. So that's why I'm not tilting this on an easel and working on it. I'm working on this flat. Okay, so that's the same if you're using inks. If you're using very wet paints, like this is a very wet medium. Medium just means the type of art supply that you are using. So again, this bright red is no longer bright red because I mixed it with green. So let me make sure I have a clean brush. So this is why we always use clean water as well. So this red, which is undisturbed, has not been contaminated with the green, looks a lot different than that red, doesn't it? And the same thing, we go with the green. You get my green paintbrush. Look at how bright and happy that green is compared to when we mixed it with the red. Okay, so you can get lots and lots of different types of hues, different color. Hue and color means the same thing, depending on if you've mixed it with its complementary. Exciting stuff, folks. Exciting stuff. So how do we remember our complementaries? Think about Christmas, red and green. Think about, in general, people who celebrate Easter, a lot of like their decorations are purple and yellow, and then orange and blue is what's left over. And I can kind of think about basketballs. Basketballs are usually like a bright orange, and a lot of times the basketball court, the lines on the court will be blue. So that kind of is how I remember those two things. So I'm going to move that out of the way, and I am going to bring this guy back. So this is I think finished as far as the paint is concerned. I may add more to it later. Art is freedom, folks. You can make decisions. I love it. So I am going to add, let's see, let's get to the original. Here's the original. So I added little bits of ink in pen in different places. So permanent pen. This we use all water-based stuff. Now I'm going to use a permanent pen. So I love these Sharpie fine tip pens, but you could use, a lot of people like Micron, but you could use just a plain old clickety pen if you wanted. I'm going to use this pen on dry ink. So I am not going to work on what we were working on just now because it's quite wet still, because it's quite wet. This is dry and doesn't have the finishing touches. So I've added some little marks throughout. I'm going to add some marks to this one just to vamp up the complexity, to make this a bit more contrasty. Let's see, organizing my space a little. So every once in a while, pause in your art making and just organize your space. That way you know where everything is. So like these blueberries. Let's see. So I am just going to put some of those like blueberry stem little doodads on these guys. Maybe I'll work on spirals in these guys. And it's just a little more complex. I think good pieces of art look great from across the room and from up close. So I want someone who sees this in an art gallery from across the room to be so excited about the colors and to be excited about the design that they have to walk over to it and look at it close up. And then they are rewarded by coming close up by me, by seeing art, more marks and more complex designs when they are close up. So they may not see these tiny little lines from across the room, but they will come close up and see some more interesting stuff. So simple supplies we've used so far. We have used a water-soluble, washable marker. We've used some sort of paper. Again, I like this Canson. If your paper has gotten really wrinkly because you've added water to it, if you are a kiddo, please get an adult to help you with this, but you can use a dry iron, meaning an iron with no steam in it, no water. You can use a dry iron and put, let's say, a paper bag on top of this and then iron it, and the paper will become flat again. Or you can just let it be crinkly, because maybe that's cool too, just to let it be crinkly. So I'm just going around and adding some little doodads. Oh, I love it. It makes me happy. I was talking about art being freedom. Why I say that and what I mean by that is if I decide that I'm living in a world where blueberries and daisies hang out together and are friends, and that's what I've decided. I have a character named Bunzy, who you saw here. This is Bunsy. Hi, how you doing? I created a character named Bunsy, and he has a world of adventures, and that's freedom to me. That is freedom, that I can decide that this cute little bunny goes around the world and makes imaginary experiences happen for himself. So if you're feeling bummed out, like right now, it's a rainy day where I'm sitting. If you're feeling bummed out that you can't go outside and like play in the leaves or whatever, you can decide to use your imagination and draw up a whole story about what it would be like to be in that pile of leaves. So that, my friends, is what I mean by art being freedom. I'm wondering what you think about that. Okay, we've got just a couple minutes left. So what we've done is we've looked at negative and positive shapes, right? You can color the positive shape, you can color the negative shapes. We have looked at the color wheel, and remember, blue and orange are complementary. Purple and yellow and red and green are complementary. We have looked at using some very simple designs. And again, if you want to check out what I'm doing on Instagram or Facebook, it's Filomena Jack Studio. I will post pictures of my completed designs. And you can also sign up for more of my classes at Filomena Jack Studio. I hope you have enjoyed today's lessons. We have just about 4 minutes left. I think I'm gonna work on this one a little bit more. So I've added some stripes, and I can notice now that I'm using a square brush because I'm looking at shapes that have that have some right angles to it. So I'm using a brush that makes sense for the shape. If I were using more than one color, what would it be called, class? That's right, polychromatic. And if it is just one color, what is it called? That is correct, polychromatic. You are all so stinking smart. I can't take it. I love it. Okay, so once this dries up again, I'm going to add some more ink to it, either with my Sharpie pen or again, even with a Cheapo Depot clicky pen. Oh, here's another art tip. You ready? Are you ready for it? Here's 2 art tips in one. One, always sign your work. I sign my pieces with this cool FJ for Filomena Jack. And also, I'm going to suggest that you always paint from your farthest away to your nearest. So I am left-handed, so right is far away. So I will paint on the right side and then come along to my left side. That way I do not smear the paint. I love it. I also have free and paid for classes over on my Patreon page. So if you are a member of Patreon or you want to go hang out there, you can find me at Filomena Jack Studio on Patreon, and there are different levels. Some people just donate $2 a month and they get shout outs on my socials, and some people donate more and they get handmade paintings and artwork from me. Ooh, I am loving it. So what did you like better? Did you like the monochromatic paintings, or did you like when I was using the polychromatic, when I was using more than one color? Let me know. Send me an email, philomenajackstudio@gmail.com. Thank you so much for hanging out. Thank you, thank you, thank you. The Empire State Maker Faire and all the folks putting this together. The folks behind the scenes are amazing. Please send them your love and support. Send them a high five virtually. And who knows, next year we'll all be live and hanging out together and slinging paint. That would be awesome. We're going to close down. Thank you all. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So much love going your way. And let's see if I can get my face in here at the last minute. I can. There you are. I love, love, love you. Thanks for making art with me today. Bye.